Welcome to Because We Love You, a podcast dedicated to helping you live a life of wellness. My name is Stacy, and this is my co-host, Jade.
Hey everyone, we're so excited. This episode is going to be about giving, and this is the month of December, which is a month full of giving. So we're so excited to have some guests along with us, and we're going to dive right in. If you see anything that you want to know more about or where we've gotten our research from, please check out our show notes. And as always, follow us on Instagram or listen to us on Spotify, YouTube, or Apple Podcasts. Hi everyone, we're so excited. This is December. We're in the month of December. Who's excited? We love Christmas.
Yes.
Right.
Super excited.
So when I think about December, I think about a month of giving.
Yeah, that's right.
It's personally a time where I tend to give more, and I tend to buy a lot more gifts for my kids and for people in my life that are so important. And I think that goes along with research, because research says that in December, approximately 1/3 of donations are made in 1 month. We have 11 other months, and 1/3 of them are made during this month. So it's so appropriate that we talk about this today, and we have some guests.
Yeah, that's right. So I'm really excited to introduce you to two people who I love very much. And so this is Reverend Dr. Joe Blosser. He is a director for the Center of Community Engagement and a professor of religion and philosophy. And we have Dr. Allie Blosser, what a power couple here, who is a professor of education. And so welcome. To Because We Love You.
Hey, it's great to be here. Thanks for having us.
Thanks. Of course. And so we invited them to join us today just to give us a better perspective about giving. So both of them are very passionate about giving time and resources and money and know a lot more about that than we do. And so today we do want to, talk with them about how to give responsibly in this month of giving. So both of them are very involved in the local community, on many boards for local nonprofits, and just generally pretty great people, I must say. Might be a little biased, but
thanks, Stacey.
They have two wonderful children, so also parents. I'm excited to hear their perspective about modeling giving to our children.
So I just want to just start with like a question, because giving, a lot of times I feel like we give because we've first been given,
Mm-hmm.
And so has there been any time in your life where you have been given? And today we're going to focus more on money, because I know that we've all been given a lot of time and people providing resources for us. But today, has there been any monetary gift that has meant so much to you, and almost so much that it's just spurred on your giving in your own life?
You want to start with that?
Sure. Well, first off, both of my parents did model giving and were certainly very generous, not only to their children, but to their communities. But one of the monetary gifts that sticks out to me is actually Joe's grandmother, Grandmama Oder. That was what we called her. She was a professor of education too, just like me. And Joe and I started dating before I went to grad school for education. And so Joe's grandmother was kind of part of my journey as I was pursuing a PhD in education. And she, I would talk to her through that process and talk to her about the classes I was taking. And when it came time for me to graduate, we didn't have a ton of money. We had been graduate students, and
At graduate student life.
Yes. And I had 2 new babies when I was graduating too. Was trying to juggle all of that, and it came time to buy my graduation robe, which I don't know if y'all know this, but graduation robes are incredibly expensive. They're $1,000, right? Which is a lot of money just for regalia.
And that was
Polyester
very,
regalia.
very surprising for
Right.
me. What is the cost of making those? I want to meet one. I mean, see one.
Yeah, $1,000 of polyester.
We can make that
I'll touch
happen.
it later. I'll meet it.
You can meet my robe later.
That $1,000.
Big plans tonight, guys. Jade is meeting my robe.
Well, yeah, but you could buy a lot of diapers for $1,000, right?
That's right. Yes.
So, anyway, it came time to buy my graduation robe, and Joe's grandmother offered to buy it for me.
Wow, that's
and
awesome.
so she did. And
I'm not sure she knew how much it was at first. We're like, Grandma, like $100, that's, that'd be great. You don't have to pay for the whole thing. She's like, no, how much does it really cost? And we're like, $1,000. But she did it. I mean, and she was happy to.
Yep.
So
and
sweet.
I put a dedication to her in my dissertation.
Oh,
and,
Grandma.
Yep.
Love
So it was awesome, and I wore it really, really proudly that day.
Yeah.
So that's just
And now we wear them a couple times a year. So now
I
you
know.
can
Now
wear
I'm
it
actually
every time, right?
Yes, exactly.
That's awesome.
And I grew up, my parents were very generous. They gave a lot of money to others, certainly to took care of my sisters and I. But one I do think about is when we were getting married, also didn't have much money because we were in grad school. Your mom came through big time. Like we were not really expecting a whole lot to help pay for the wedding. And your mom stepped up big time to really help us be able to afford that, so that we were like starting marriage not in the red.
Yeah. That's a gift.
It's like you don't,
Yeah.
getting started with marriage is enough. And dealing with debt on top of that would be even harder. So that was a big one too.
Absolutely. What about you, Jade? Do you have one?
Yes. So I think the biggest gift I've ever been given monetarily is when we adopted our son about 3 years ago, and we didn't know how we were actually going to pay for it. But I decided, hey, we'll just take out an interest-free credit card, and I didn't want to ask people for money because I had a job and my husband had a job, and I just thought, we need to decide on this, and if I can buy cars and if I can buy things, then I can choose to invest in this. So I put it on an interest-free credit card, and we started making payments, and 2 years went by. And I mean, it's just hard. It's hard when you've also got other bills and daycare. And one day, it was actually my grandmother came to me, and she was like, how much is the full amount, the rest of it to pay off? And she gave me the full in total amount. Wow. And it was just a moment. I mean, it was financially freeing. It was also special because that was a decision in my heart that we had made, that we knew that God had called us to adoption, but we didn't really know how we were going to afford it or pay for it. So I encourage you in life, when you feel called to something, you just do it. You do it. You find a way. And then I can't promise you in 2 years you'll get the payoff, but what I can promise is there will be provision. And there was provision in me in that moment. And what it also taught me is like that feeling of when you've been given something that you don't deserve, and that is just so big. And it made me want to replicate that in others' life, in like a daily thing. Like I want others to feel the way I felt when I was given something big. And maybe like when you just take a burden off someone, whether it's a car payment. And plenty of times it's like, I just want them to feel like they have a month to breathe, that they have their mortgage covered. And I just think when you live life like that, you can make such a huge, big difference. But I think that I can only give, especially when it's money, when that's something we hold so tightly sometimes, because I've been first given to. So
I think that's interesting from a research perspective, because when I was looking at what, psychology has to say about giving, kind of two principles kept coming up. And one is this kind of reciprocity norm, the idea that we feel like we need to give back when people have given to us. And so that kind of fits with what you're talking about. And the other one I find interesting is this social responsibility norm. So this idea that, of course, we all feel some sense of obligation to give to people who have less than we have, right? And people who cannot necessarily provide for themselves. So to care for children, for example, right? Like, and other people who maybe don't have access to resources that we have. And so interesting to think about where that comes from, and also maybe just, why why people give, right?
And applying that to people who may not need it, but that it's just an act of fulfilling a basic desire or a stress reliever, because I want to be a giver that doesn't just say you desperately need me to give to live, but no, I want to give to make your life better, to make you happier, to make you more fulfilled, to, so I think that changes the perspective a little bit always on giving.
I think we do have a fairly unique culture on giving. I mean, a lot of cultures give, right? This is a part of anthropologically, we can look at kind of the importance of that for humanity. But I mean, as a U.S., there's long been a culture of giving to the public welfare in some way, right? So this is something like that Alexis de Tocqueville writes about in the 1830s as he's touring the United States. He's noting to writing to people back in Europe, one of the markers of this new land is the willingness of people to contribute from what they have to the public welfare.
Yeah.
Right. So like the United Way now has something called the de Tocqueville Society. That's the society of the big givers in the United Way. But it's named that because de Tocqueville was making this kind of observation about our country. And I think there are probably a number of ways you can think about why it's that way. But I do think that there's been a long culture of giving in the U.S. That is different from how other cultures approach philanthropy and approach giving.
Yeah. I think it's interesting to go back to thinking about why people give. So we have this culture. Do you think it matters why people give specifically money?
Well, I mean, my question is, matters to who?
Yeah, no, that's a great point, right?
So for a lot of nonprofits and groups that are trying to raise money, or if you desperately need money and someone's offering it to you, it may not matter a whole lot there.
Like I just need it to get by, right? Yeah.
But, as a psychologist, I think from that perspective, I think it matters. For me, as someone who studies ethics, I think it matters a lot what moral intentions you bring to the act. So just as work of self-knowledge, trying to come up with why we give, because I think there are healthier and harmful ways that for ourselves that we can give, right? Just because we're giving doesn't mean we're helping our own well-being.
Sure.
What but I think just for our viewers and listening, there is a basic in the brain when we give, if we put people in functional MRI scanners, they're the same places of food and sex and these reward centers lights up with giving. So we know that that's like the pull. There's got to be a pull because or else why would we give? So we have that. But if their motive was, let's say, narcissistic, or if their motive was like self-esteem, like they just wanted more friends, or to give or to get, do you think that changes? I just want to make that clear for the viewers just to make sure that they knew what was going on. So do you think that change, like so you're saying it matters to who, so you're saying that it matters, you don't want to take back, money that was deceitful, right? Or like from human trafficking,
right,
like sure. If we're selling girls on the side like that, we don't want to be a person who's taking that money. I know I'm going extreme. Wow,
that got deep real quick there.
That's what he's saying. But if you just want to, because we live in a society that posts a picture every time they do anything great or beautiful, and they use it under the pretense of we're drawing awareness. And I battle that sometimes. Am I taking this picture doing this great thing for awareness, or am I doing it to get some type of glory?
I want all these likes because I'm a good person.
I think about some of it. I work with college students who a lot, they're coming out of high school with a kind of degree of philanthropy and donation and giving, and that is probably unheard of, right? Because it's what you have to do to get into college, right? You've got to be involved in these groups, and you got to show that you're, engaged. And we get into college, and students will sometimes, be doing the selfies, and they'll be doing. But I want to see that as the hook, right? So that may be why you're doing it to start. But let's take that. It is, activating part of your brain that gives a reward for it. And I want to draw you deeper into understanding both of yourself and of the context in our world that you're giving to, in the hopes of kind of, you've got your toe in the water. You're doing it for your own reasons, but I want to pull you into a deeper way of understanding, a deeper way of giving, so it becomes a lifelong habit and not something that's built on immediate brain responses, right? But it becomes a way of being. It becomes a habit,
and that there are better ways of giving,
right? And better ways to do it, right? So that it doesn't. You're able to see over time the bigger impact of doing it. So it's not an immediate response only, but you're seeing these longer term reasons and longer term responses that make you want to stay and develop that kind of relationship with the world.
Well, I think because we know that giving is a predictor of happiness. And so as we get happier and more fulfilled in our own lives, like we want to see that, we want to be happier, so we want to give more. But I love that, because how many people have gone on that first mission trip because the cute boy was in the group? Okay, I may be calling myself out. But then it became so much more. It became so much. It was like a heart decision. It was like, this is moving. The world is bigger than my little town of Kernersville, North Carolina. You know, there's so much to be done. And so that's kind of like, so maybe it doesn't matter the intention. If true giving happens, we can
and grow through the process. Like the hook doesn't matter if you can get people into giving, but then once we're there, to kind of really, I like that idea of kind of reflecting on why we're doing it and the importance of it and thinking about the context.
I think that's a call to, youth ministers who are listening, or anyone who's engaging with people in this process. What structures are you setting up to pull people deeper? Right. So that it's not just one-off experiences that are happening, but really you're creating this longer term mindset. And you started by talking about 30% of giving happening in December, right? So, one of these shifts is toward having your December giving being the same as your time all year long giving, right? So not saving up all your happiness
convicting
to give it away in 1 month, right? But let's spread it out. And that's, it's something that we as a couple, we have worked on in our own giving, is trying to, just for budgeting purposes. So, spread it out throughout the year. It's good for nonprofits. It's good for churches if they're getting money throughout the year. Often the summertime is the hardest time for nonprofits to fund themselves, because everyone's on vacation. They're not, you're on vacation. You're not thinking about, I got to donate.
And you're spending extra money, so you don't want to donate.
Right. But it's just thinking when we talk about those lifelong kind of habits, doing it every month, and getting in that habit. I think
I've always thought it's just kind of crazy that we don't necessarily think about treating or rewarding our friends other than birthdays or Christmas, just why is that
and
so
those
blockade?
Poor friends whose birthdays are on December 24th.
I know, they're just
some of our good friends.
I know, it all gets lumped together. So sad.
So who gives? Who are the people that give the most, or what type of person characterizes people who are givers?
Yeah. So I was looking into this a little bit this week, and I think it's interesting you bring up ministry and youth ministry, right? Because one of the things that's probably not surprising is that people who consider themselves religious give more money than other people. So that's part of the culture of many religions, right? But this idea, there was one study that I was reading about. It was by Pelham and Crabtree. And they surveyed people basically about their likelihood of giving their money, or if they gave their money or time in the last month. And people who rated themselves as highly religious, which meant they, said they were involved in a religion, an organized religion, and had been to a religious service within the last week, were 50% more likely to give within the last month. And so people coming, who associate themselves with a religion, seem to be givers. The other thing, thinking about our message from in the last few weeks, is people who are happy. We give more when we're happy. So not only does it seem to make us feel happy, but when we are happy, we're more generous. So
there's so much to be said just kind of about that. The one thing that is when you mentioned when they go to church regularly, I think that the church has also seen a crisis because people aren't going into the building. They're actually not giving. So that's a very interesting thing, that when they don't attend church regularly, they actually stop giving. So what is it, that moment that they have, or is it just the place that institutes that, or should it not be more of their relationship or habit of giving? So just some interesting thoughts, why does that happen? Because I don't think, because there's also ways to watch. People can watch online.
Sure, right? And the
things
church
like
is not
that.
the building. And
And we don't even touch money anymore. Like,
Yeah.
it's
It's
all
easy to give
Venmo.
online, right?
Yeah,
Yeah.
that's right.
So you can still give, but maybe it's the remembrance. And I mean, we have in the Bible, like religious people, I mean, that in reading the Bible, it's just full of that, right?
Yeah.
It's full of saying, I mean, there were people who gave it all, like gave up their families, not just money. And I love even the parables where it wasn't about how much they gave, it was about the proportion. Like it was the lady who gave almost everything she had or everything she had. So not just, there might be people who give more than you, but if you're giving out of a sacrificial give that where it hurts a little bit, perhaps your blessing is bigger. So religious people, they tend to give.
Yeah.
Do you have
Yeah.
anything to give, Reverend Dr.
Well,
Joe?
no, I mean, I think, again, going back to de Tocqueville and just our culture, so much, I think, of the engagement of why you give is because you're participating in these communities. And as a culture, one of the things that worries me is we're losing a lot of these third spaces, these places where people gather outside of work and home, because those are often the places that make us give. They're the Rotary clubs and the Kiwanis clubs and the churches and these places where people from different walks of life, different political persuasions, different religious persuasions get together.
Yeah.
And those are often the kind of core of a community. If you don't have that, then you have a bedroom community, right? People are they live there and they work there and that's it.
Yeah.
And you don't have this thing that bonds us together that makes us want to give to each other.
Yeah.
Yeah.
And so, I go back to like the famous argument in bowling alone, right? When the bowling teams, right, we can see the decline in bowling teams in the U.S. But that loss of the civil society of those places where we come together, that I think is worrisome when you're talking about creating that culture of giving, because we have to be together. We have to see each other's needs. We have to be proximate to the need in order to feel compelled to give. If we live our lives in gated communities and in, at work or wherever we are, or even not gated communities, just middle-class communities, but we're not regularly engaging people who are experiencing poverty, if we're not proximate to the need, it's pretty easy to ignore it.
Yeah.
And it's pretty easy for most people to go about their daily lives and not have to engage people who are really in need.
That's why we stress building relationships with the community so much with our students, right? I mean, we want you to become proximate to the community, to be in the community, to get to know the people.
I mean, it drives some of my students crazy when I'm like, they want to go and they want to fix a problem, right? They want to solve something. I'm like, your job is to listen.
Yeah. Yeah.
Right. The most important thing
Absolutely.
you can do is go and build a relationship with one person today at this site.
Yeah.
Because you actually can't do anything until you're in relationship.
Yeah, that's good.
That's really good.
That reminds me of, I was listening to a message by Erwin McManus, and he was talking about this idea of when we give, oftentimes, like, let's say you're trying to grow crops, right? That we have this idea where you drive by fields and we're just like throwing out seed, right? Like throwing out, and we feel like we're making a difference. But what's better than just throwing out seed in random places is to plant the seed where you're at so that you can, you know where it's going, so that you can work on helping those things grow rather than just, throwing out the seed and then driving by and leaving, right? That, kind of the idea of planting the seed in the community that you're in. And so I love that reference of thinking about building relationships in your community and just how important that is.
And also what you said about people need to know the need. I think when you look at research, people give more if they know the need. So we need to be exact, like people need to know what's out there. And you only know that if you're in the proximity of them. And if we're telling people like, hey, this is something that we see, or we need you to come along, because they're much more prone to say, hey, I want to be a part of that.
Yeah. And I think it becomes kind of dangerous and paternalistic if we assume what organizations need or what people need, right? I mean, we need to ask, we need to listen, and we need to empower communities, right? As we think about how we give.
Yeah.
So,
And I think the best gives are when we experience like the person engaging in them and getting them. Do you get what I'm saying? So it's hard for me sometimes to give $150 to missions every month. I don't see the kids or the food that goes out. I just blindly give this money every month, hoping that it goes. But it's so much more easy if I'm walking alongside a friend who can't afford a birthday cake or can't afford this. And I'm like, hey, like, I want to meet that need for you. And so I think when we're living in these communities or these churches, or we know somebody that didn't have electricity last month, that's when we're able to see it all to fruition, and you're able to get that robe experience where you're like, I didn't have $1,000 for this robe, but somebody loved me enough to give this to me. And that's where we truly, like, it feeds on both sides. So interesting.
I think too, sometimes I think we have, we're willing to give to people we know, right? We'll give you cash because I think I know you, Stacy. You need money. Give you money. I know you're going to use it for a good thing. We have a lot of these built up stereotypes in our head of what people experiencing poverty are like. And if you give them cash, they're going to buy booze or, they're going to go do drugs or they're going to do bad stuff. Right. Yeah. So we don't want to give money to people who are poor. We want to give them the object.
Socks.
Right? Yeah. We're going to give you socks. We're going to give you food. We're going to give you, we're going to give you the thing because we don't trust you with cash.
Yeah.
And I think, we've actually had a rather unique social experiment in some ways over the last 18 months in COVID. We saw the food hardship rate in our local community drop to the lowest number it's ever been since we've been studying. So it dropped to around 11% of our community experiencing food hardship. That's still a pretty high number. We're still over the national average, but we dropped to 11% from up around 24%.
Wow.
And in the height of the pandemic, we were at 33% of our entire community experiencing food hardship. So it's been a massive drop. So the question is, why in the middle of a pandemic did we experience the lowest food hardship we'd ever had?
Money.
Right. Yeah. Cash payments, unemployment, expanded unemployment benefits, the straight up government payments, expanded EBT cards. I mean, all of the government money that was flowing out to people who were experiencing poverty resulted in the lowest food hardship we'd had, which is a pretty good indication that when people experiencing poverty are given cash, they use it to buy food.
Yeah.
Right? They use it to pay for basic needs. Yeah. And I think as you get proximate to people, as you're experiencing communities that sometimes we're not in, you realize I trust them with the money. They need the money to make the choices to be able to do things. So, sometimes I do think we steer away from giving money because we think it's better to give stuff.
Yeah.
And I do think that there are times and places where giving money is what's really needed.
Yeah. So in a season when probably most of us are going to be upping our giving, although of course, as we talked about, it should be a habit, right? But if we are upping our giving this month or every month, what would you guys say about giving responsibly? How are we better givers of our money?
Do you want me to do that?
You can start with that.
Oh, jeez. I mean, this is...
Just a softball for you here.
Yeah, right. I mean, this is a huge question because how do we give well without being paternalistic, because we should have intentionality in these things that we're doing when we give.
But even if we have the wrong intention, you just told us earlier that we can establish new habits. So
That's
it's
right,
not completely...
one thing I think about... when we're trying to give responsibly is really thinking about what the organizations that we're giving to, because most of us are giving to organizations and not individuals, right? Thinking about how we can participate in the mission or the work of those organizations. So our giving is pretty much exclusively to organizations that we're putting sweat equity into as well.
Yep.
Right. Because we believe in the mission, we want to be part of it, so we're also going to give money to it. So that, I guess that would be my first thing is like, look at the places where you're passionate, where you're putting in that kind of effort yourself. Because I think it's going to drive you to give more. It's also going to make you a better advocate in trying to get other people to give.
Yeah, I just like the verse in the Bible is where your treasure is, your heart is. So like where we put our money, our heart is. And I think that goes back where our heart is, our treasure will be. Yep. So you just said, like, find the thing where your heart is. If you want to give, go follow your heart.
Yeah. And then, I think one of the places, and as a pastor, I can be hard on Christians about this. We get really paternalistic. Like we really think we know what's best for people. And so trying to find ways of giving that aren't paternalistic, but are empowering.
Yeah.
And during the holiday season, I'm going to slaughter some sacred cows here, I think. I mean, there are some things that
Challenge
we
us,
do
Joe.
that drive me crazy. So I am
boy.
not...
Okay, I like this.
Here we
This
go.
is the kind of stuff I really
I know,
like.
right?
Conflict.
I am not an Operation Christmas Child person.
Yeah.
I have a lot of problems with... And not just Operation Christmas Child there. I mean, there are a number of these sorts of projects where we're using money to buy consumer items that may or may not be exactly what are needed to send to people, right? So filling shoeboxes of consumer items and sending them off destroys local economies. Anyway, there's a whole nother podcast on that. But, I had one of my students a couple of years ago who wanted to do a kind of angel tree sort of project. And I really challenged her to think about, how do you get proximate, right? So how can you do a Christmas project that gets you closer to people, but also a project that empowers people? And she did an amazing job. And what she did, she worked with the Chavis YMCA here in High Point. She raised a bunch of money. She got a lot of donations for all these presents, and she set them up on tables, kind of grouped them together in kind of a price and kids' age groupings. And then parents would come and they'd bring their kids, and the kids would play with the college students. They'd play basketball and hang out and eat and have a meal, while the parent would pay in $5. She's like, it's important that parents feel like this isn't just charity. They're putting something in.
I contributed to my kids'
I'm part
Christmas
of this.
gifts.
Yeah.
So the parents would pay in. Then the parents would go into the room with all the presents, and they'd have a certain number that they could get from tables. So they're picking out their kids' present, right?
That's really
they're
good.
making the choices for what their kid wants. Not just, my kid is a size 10 and likes shirts with basketballs on them, right? That
Yeah.
you might write on a angel tree thing, right?
Yeah.
But the parent actually picks it.
Right.
And then they go and they wrap it themselves.
Yeah.
Yeah.
And they, put it in the bag, they go put it in the car, and then they go back with their kid and they finish lunch and they eat. And like that project for her, she built a lot of relationships with people. She got to know people. She got to see this was empowering rather than giving people what we think they ought to have or what they need. So, finding ways to give that bring you closer into people, that help you engage more in the issues, and aren't paternalistic, but are rather
Empowering to them.
Yeah, empowering people, seeing their dignity, their humanity, and not washing that out.
And
That's
that's
a
a
great
shout
story.
out for that toxic charity book, right? That you and I
Sure, yeah.
have
This is
read.
Robert Lupton's book.
Right.
Yeah.
We can put that in your
Show
resources.
notes. Yeah,
your
that'd be great.
Show
For
notes.
sure.
That's a great text for faith communities to read, I think, for...
Yeah,
I love
he's got a challenging story in there about showing up to provide gifts to a family at Christmas and the father sneaking out the back because it was so hard on the dad.
It was humiliating.
Yeah.
Yeah, it's humiliating for him to not be able to provide gifts for his kids. So while, the good church people who are showing up at the presents get that good rush,
The warm
that good
fuzzy.
feel,
Right.
Yeah.
what it does to the parents on the other side. Even, they may be very grateful for their
Yeah.
kids, but emotionally inside,
Yeah.
think about if we couldn't provide Christmas for our kids.
Yeah.
That would be heart-wrenching, even if we were so grateful for the people who were providing.
Right.
Yeah. Yeah. You can be grateful, but then that feeling of not being able to be the one who provides that and your kids watching that has to feel pretty bad. That's powerful.
I love that. And there's actually a new organization, or it's not new, but it'll be new to here. It's called CityServe. It's based out of California, but they are taking on that whole structure of it'll be returned Amazon items, and they're going to be establishing warehouses where people can come and shop for like discounted prices, so you can still get what you want or what you need. And nobody's telling you, you have to take this shower curtain. We're giving away, this,
Right.
but it'll be a warehouse where they can shop, and there'll be hours, but it'll be much discounted and whatnot. So they still have to pay something. So I think that this idea is trickling, and they're planning on doing that with food and the resources and a few other things. So I think that hopefully we'll see that explode over the next few months and stuff. And that's a way, and it seems a much more healthier way than just people pulling up in your parking lot and getting a box of food.
Well, and it's like we hear all the time with, how we give food to people, that oftentimes when we take food out of our pantry, it's the food that we don't want, right? Like, here's a can of creamed corn that has been sitting there for 10 months, and we're going to donate it to our food pantry. Well, if we don't want it, what makes us think that someone else is going to want it?
Yeah.
Right. Like right. And so, again, like letting families kind of pick out what they need, what they want.
A funny story to that is one time we did a food giveaway, and but it was a high Muslim population, and we literally gave pork in the food box, and it was a moment where I was like, that's terrible. Why are we giving them this thing that we know they don't need, want, or they don't respect at all? And that's not, it is what it is. I still think the heart is behind there, but it's got to be like this change, this shift of just not just giving whatever, you'll take whatever. No, they deserve what they need, and we need to be more.
Let them shop for their food.
We all have kids. What are the likelihood if you just got a box of food that your kids would eat what's in it?
Oh my, right?
So,
That's a great point.
I can give a shout out to a place like West End Ministries does a grocery store style food pantry. Right, so you come in and you select your own. So it's a customer choice, client choice kind of model. And that's in my work with the Food Alliance. That was a lot of what we were doing, was working with pantries to think, how do you infuse more choice? Because you're going to reduce the amount of waste. Because if you get a box with stuff that you can't eat, you just throw it away. So all that food went away.
Right.
Other people might eat that.
Right.
But then when we think about religious preferences, the pork, that's not a one-off, right? Like that is all the time. Think about all the stuff that pork is in.
Right.
That ends up in, so when you have Muslim families and like, they can't eat that, right? That's not what they need protein wise in their food boxes. But also think about the number of seniors and people we have that have diabetes or high blood pressure that need to be watching their sodium intakes. And think about the food that usually ends up in food boxes is often really high sodium.
Right.
Yeah.
I think about that a lot.
And high sugar.
Being
When you
unhealthy.
think even about grocery stores that donate food, we often get so many like loaves
Pastries.
of bread and cakes and
White bread.
pastries
Right.
and
Living on donuts, those jelly pastries,
Oh my
whatever. There
goodness,
were like
yeah.
so many of those. And I'm like, I don't want to
So,
even give these away.
Yeah. The whole food, like, again, another podcast,
Yeah.
right? But because that's something I've spent a lot of time in High Point
Right.
working on is
Yeah.
food. And it's there are good models out there, but they take a lot of time. They take a lot of investment. But they have pretty big payoffs because they can infuse dignity into the process rather than creating this barrier between the giver and the taker, right? And making a more collaborative space.
In our food pantry, we found out one of the biggest needs was dog food, right? So we
something people don't think of.
right. So
Yeah, because we do end up with folks who will feed their pets before they'll feed themselves.
Yep.
Right. So providing dog food helps the other food go further. And we've also had in studies we've done, we have folks who are eating animal food.
Wow.
So that was from some of the surveys that we did in the 27260 part of High Point, where we had seniors who were supplementing their own meals with cat food. They were using dish detergent as body. They were trying to find creative ways to stretch money because the stuff that comes in the boxes isn't always exactly what they need.
right.
So anyway.
I think that's a great challenge as we think about moving forward and as we think about giving in the next few weeks, is just thinking about getting in those communities that we're giving to, which is a hard thing, instead of just writing a check and passing it on, trying to relate to the people that we're giving to and ask questions about, what really is the need, and giving them power in their choices.
I think a lot of good things are going on, but we all need to learn. We all need to be better, and it's all a work in progress. So, because not to be downing all the food banks in the area or do anything,
Right.
we're thankful for we're thankful for all of that. But we can all learn as we get knowledge. Like, knowledge is power to change and to do more with, and that's what we hope even today is. Because I know that it's encouraged me along how to give better and how to not just to make it where my heart is, and also to look at like these organizations and say, hey, how can we not be so toxic in our charity, you know, and
That's right.
and we can change lives and help them feel more. That's what I want to do, because I don't want we don't want a feeling of this God mentality. Look at us giving you, but like, no, we're in this together.
Yeah.
We're in this together. We want to help you and encourage you and get you to that job interview and see what you can do and all you can be. So I'm very encouraged by giving.
Yeah, absolutely.
I mean, Jay, I think one of the things you said that is just powerful to think about is this idea, like, that when we give, it's not a zero-sum game, right? So when I give to you, that doesn't mean that I have less, but like through giving, we can make more for everybody.
Right.
And I think
That's
breaking that mentality of this is just a zero-sum game, right? But especially for people of faith, the giving multiplies,
Right.
right? And I think if we can get into that mindset versus this, zero-sum game, I think it can transform the way we view other people in our world.
And we're trying, you and I are trying to model that for our kids right now.
Yeah, that's a great question, because many of us are parents. And so how do we model healthy giving to our kids?
Take them along.
Well, we take them along.
Yeah.
Practical things we do in our family: a spend, save, share jar. Right, every time they get money for a birthday. Right, we always say, all right, you need to put some in your spend, some in your save, and some in your share. Right, and it gives more to everyone.
I like that, getting them in the habit early of thinking about that. If only we all thought that way every time we got a paycheck or every time, we got a monetary gift, that could be really powerful.
And illustrating it. So us being better at that and taking our kids along that journey when we give, letting them know we give. Because I'm a little bit convicted of that right now. I'm like, you know what? They don't know. They don't even know that we give to this whole organization over here. And I'm like, man, they need to understand that.
We also did this noisy offering at our church where we gave the kids buckets and had them collect the offering during the worship service.
Yeah.
And we wanted people to give change.
We wanted people to give change, right?
Right.
But
So bring your change from home and dump it in, right?
Yeah.
Right, and so it made all this noise. We heard
Joyful
hearing aids
noise.
going off like crazy in our church community. It was funny, but it also it was just one little thing that kind of modeled for the kids, but we involved them in the offering, and it was really cool, and they got excited about it, and we started to make it a regular part of our
Pre-pandemic.
Church service, right? But that was just another kind of small gesture, but it was a way of just,
Getting kids involved.
getting kids involved.
That's cute.
Because if we don't talk about it, it will go the opposite way. We were in Target the other day, and we were buying a birthday gift, and my youngest daughter, she was like, why do we always come here and buy stuff for other people? And I was like, because we have a lot of friends and we have birthday parties to go to. And then I had this whole giving discussion about that. I'm like, because we don't come to the store just to get stuff for us.
Right.
But it was a good moment, but we just have way too few of those. So that's encouraging. We need to be talking to our kids about this. Yeah. So many good nuggets.
Yes.
So many good things.
Yes.
And so happy to have you on.
Yeah, it was a really
this
helpful
episode.
perspective. So thank you all for sharing.
Yeah,
with
thanks
us.
for
Absolutely.
having us.
Yeah, we love being here.
Yeah.
We've started December off right, Stacy.
That's right.
And we talk about all these things because we
We love
you.
you.